Our guest today is Victoria Reynolds. Victoria, you have great qualifications. Victoria, you are an author.
Yes.
And you're a life coach?
Well, I'm lots of things, of course. Professionally, that what I do is I teach people how to start living a life that deep inside they know they're really worth. And what I do is create those feelings of validation that help people break through their perceived barriers to get to whatever that next level is in their life, be it in their personal life, in their relationships, in their career. I work with the inside stuff.
And you're a motivational speaker.
I am, and I'm an author.
You certainly are. And you're very well known, and we're very proud to have you with us today.
Thank you. I am delighted to be here.
The subject matter you have chosen today is very good.
Today we're going to be talking about humility and the misperception of what it really means to be humble and the misperception of what the ego is, because the ego and humility are very much intertwined. So one of the misperceptions that we have is that humility, I shouldn't say we, one of the misperceptions I was raised with, so I certainly can't claim this for everyone else, I was raised with the misperception that humility is the same as being humiliated. That in order for me to be humble, I had to be broken. That literally meant I needed to be ashamed of who I was. I needed to have a broken spirit and a broken heart, and literally come to God like a dog with its tail between its legs as a broken person. And that the only way I could get to God was if I held myself in such a space of shame and worthlessness and valueless. That's the only way God would see me. And I needed to be humiliated to keep myself small. So in that belief, I was never allowed to be proud of myself for anything. Even though I was a straight A student, I wasn't allowed to feel any sense of pride in who I was as a person. I wasn't ever allowed to feel any sense of worth, because that would have, this misperception that if I had any sense of self-worth, that it was the same as arrogance. That ego is the same as seeing ourselves as better than everybody else. There's, some of that is ridiculous in that I wasn't allowed to be proud of myself. However, as God's preferred child, I was somehow better than everybody else. One of those paradoxes that we had in our childhood, the belief system we were both a part of. And so a lot of people, even people I've talked to who are not from our background, because I work with a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds, and I'm really often hurts my heart a little bit to see how many people have this belief that humility is the same thing as humiliation, that we need to be humiliated in order for humility and to be humble, to be present in our lives. And really all that humility is, all that being humble is setting the ego aside and allowing inspiration through. It doesn't mean that we have to put ourselves so far down or be so humiliated that the only way inspiration can get through is if we completely, drive our ego into the ground. That's not what it is at all. It's literally a teamwork between a healthy ego and inspiration.
What about a broken heart and a contrite spirit?
Well, that for me was being broken. Like I was a child who needed to be broken before I could get to God. And what that does is it puts you in a position of begging and pleading rather than understanding that when you have a healthy, balanced ego, when you understand the true value of who you are, that's actually where humble, someone who's really humble, plays this amazing role in your life, because you're no longer broken. And when you have a really good, healthy ego, your ego is a part of you that helps see the direction that you go. All that the ego really does is try to figure out the how.
In other words, self-evaluation.
Yeah, it's constantly evaluating our circumstances and what is best for us and determining how the best way is to move forward in our life. So when you step the how aside and allow creativity and inspiration to move through, they work together beautifully.
So a healthy ego is not examining yourself by comparison of someone else. It's just comparing the wisdom of circumstances that you're existing in. It isn't lesser and more than other people.
Correct. So an unhealthy ego, an ego that has been broken as a child, is an ego that feels the need to put itself above others. It's that perception of arrogance that people have attached to ego. And that arrogance really comes from a broken ego, from an unhealthy ego. It's part of the misperception that self-love is the same as arrogance, and they're two completely opposite things.
So ego is self-awareness, and yet we grew up denied self-awareness, that it was evil for us to be aware of our needs, our position in life, our feelings, our emotions, even our thoughts were to be blind obedience.
Right, and that we needed to be meek. And then humility was equal to being small and being meek and being worthless and not having any value in ourselves or any awareness of ourselves. Certainly not having a relationship with ourselves.
How do we heal that?
You know, again, and as in everything I've taught, it's about learning how to consciously be aware of our thoughts and consciously decipher where they came from, and then consciously choose to no longer let those beliefs that are ultimately the beliefs that other people placed on us, those are other people's beliefs that they fed us, that we bought into as truth, and we allowed ourselves to take ownership of. Part of that is consciously choosing to move through life and no longer own other people's beliefs about who they think we need to be. It's about having a relationship with ourselves.
And it's about being honest in the position that we're in, neither above nor below, but equal understanding and comprehension of where you are. If you think you're above or below, if you're above, then it's all about me, and if you're below, it's all about them.
Right.
So it's balance.
Right. So again, what I've said in some of my other interviews that you've had with me is that all of our relationships and all of our life experience is a result of the relationship that we have with ourselves. And that's when I talked about being self-centered. It isn't about putting us above anyone else. It's understanding that everyone else is an extension of us. It's almost like we are at the heart of everything we put out. So everything has to start inside. It doesn't mean that I'm better than anyone else or less than anyone else or anybody's better than me. I need to sacrifice for anyone else. It's understanding that I am the core of my life experience. And everything in my life is a reflection of my perceptions and my reality and my relationship with myself.
So if you don't respect yourself, there's a problem at the core of your life experience.
There's a problem at the core of your life experience. And we were taught completely the opposite, that self-awareness was bad. And in reality, self-awareness is the core of our entire life experience.
So if we can't find ourself, our talent, our ability, our peace, our self-respect, our integrity at the core of the quality of our own experience, how are we going to find it in our life?
Well, what happens is that most people go through life trying to define themselves by other people's perceptions and expectations. We can never find happiness in other people's perceptions and expectations. It's impossible. And yet that is what I think most of us try to do.
They seek someone else to make them happy.
Right.
Instead of straightening out the problems in themselves that are making them unhappy.
Correct. As we know, we take ourselves wherever we go.
Yes,
so we can
do.
keep changing the circumstances. The circumstances are always going to be a reflection of how we perceive who we are on the inside. So it's based all on perception. And if we're carrying our old beliefs with us into a new circumstance, it's not going to be any different. It's just going to be replaying the same old experience in a new circumstance. It's all inside stuff. And if we want to really change our lives, we have to be willing to peel down the layers of the beliefs that have gotten us to where we are and get to the truth of who we are inside. It's all in there. Everything we ever possibly want to know is already inside of us. We just need to stop to look for it there.
And maybe contemplate and listen.
Yeah. And it really is coming down to stop being completely self-aware, being conscious of our beliefs, and asking, is this belief true? Where did this belief come from? Does this belief serve me? Am I holding on to an archaic belief that is keeping me from being who I'm really here to be? And that every one of us was born to experience joy. And how many of us are really experiencing joy? And we can't experience that as long as we're going through life based on other people's beliefs about who we are. Ultimately, we're the only ones that know who we really are.
Well, love and acceptance are like money and collateral. If you don't have any, you can't give any to anybody else.
Right.
So if you can't love and respect yourself and take care of yourself and approve of yourself, how are you going to be a genuine love for somebody else? You're caught in a trap that's sinking.
Right. Or the cup is half full, so you can only give a little bit of what you have. You can't, as I've mentioned before, when we give from the overflow, when we are full of love and we understand that what we give is a reflection of what we have, then we're giving from the overflow and we're never depleted.
Right.
Because we're always full. And it's because we've peeled down all of these layers of false beliefs and we get into what is true for us. And when I say that, because what's true for me isn't going to necessarily be what's true for you. Because every one of us is on our own unique journey. We have our own unique gifts, our own unique purpose, our own unique reason for existing. So my truth is going to be slightly different from yours because my purpose is different and my gifts are different. My propensities are different. That doesn't mean I have any more value than you do or that my gifts and my purpose is worth more than yours. Just different. That's that whole equality thing and that balance thing. It's what's unique for me and what's unique for you, and not judging me as worth more or worth less than you. Just different.
Well, it's by our differences that we grow and expand and create bridges and understanding. Not our similarities, our differences.
Right.
And so our differences should be blessed. Our different talents, our different consciousness should be blessed, not punished. Yet, where we grew up, if anyone thought differently than we did, they were under condemnation of evil and out of line.
Right. And we saw them as being, this was one of those dichotomies of being full of ego and arrogance, and that we weren't allowed to be full of ego and arrogance, again going back to the subject of humility. And yet the level of arrogance, we weren't allowed to feel highly of ourselves as an individual, but collectively, we were so much better than everybody else.
Oh, we were God's chosen people on earth.
Yeah.
That's why it made it okay to take advantage of them, because they were non-believers and they owed us.
Right.
And that's what our prophets taught us, that bleeding the beast and taking from the government was okay because they weren't living the gospel anyway. It was their debt.
Yeah. And that was our collective arrogance.
Yes.
And however, individually, we needed to stay broken.
We were very broken. We were very broken. And yet, how do you keep people broken? You tell them that they're better than someone else because if they don't receive anything for it, they can't stay.
Right.
They've got to have a reward.
You feed them just enough.
Yes, you feed them candy, mental candy, that they're superior and the choicest people on earth, while you take all their money, their lives, their dreams, their hopes, and promise them godhood. Or the men get godhood, the women just get more of the same.
The women get to be consorts.
There you go.
Yes.
God's consorts.
Yeah.
Yes, the eternal wives of God's brothel.
Precisely. So what that environment created was a lot of really unhealthy egos. A healthy, balanced ego works hand in hand, as I mentioned, really works hand in hand with inspiration. So as long as the ego is broken, inspiration doesn't work that well, because we're always trying to. The ego is always on defense, and the ego really is there to guide us and protect us and support us, and show us how to work. It's like I said, that the how, the planner, that's part of it. So that's actually the masculine part of us. So every one of us is both masculine and feminine. The ego is the masculine part of us. And it's not a bad thing. What happens when the ego is broken or damaged is that it's always trying to figure out how to fix itself. So it tries to hold itself up higher than other people to trying to maybe recover from the pain that it feels. And that's what comes across as arrogance. This is actually a broken ego that appears to be arrogance. So someone who has a really healthy ego has absolutely no need or desire to set themselves up above anybody else. And the other thing that happens with the broken ego is that it lashes out in defense.
So pious arrogance has nothing to do with holiness.
None whatsoever.
And yet we were so piously arrogant to be God's chosen people on earth, and we were suffering and sacrificing for our salvation in the assumption that we were better than other people because of our suffering and sacrificing.
Right. And then that was called humility. That was called being humble. It's a very interesting dichotomy that we were stuck in, and that those dichotomies kept us, and I suspect other people out there, stuck in a circle that you just keep going around and around and around. And you really get nowhere as long as you have two opposing beliefs.
The arrogant piety of being better than someone else is really being used to put a big Band-Aid on the trauma of feeling less than everybody else.
Right.
I'm superior to you, ego. It's not us they're trying to convince. It's themselves.
Correct. Yeah.
They have a big job.
Yeah, it's a broken ego that's trying to repair itself. How many years does it take to get over this belief that we needed to be broken? Right. And not understanding what humility really is. And it's just setting the ego aside to allow inspiration to come in so that you can move through life both inspired, having this healthy, balanced ego, and moving with inspired action rather than the ego trying to figure it out. When you allow inspiration to move in, you can move with inspired action. And it's no longer a struggle between the ego and the creativity. The creative mind and the egoic mind are constantly battling for your attention. And when you learn how to use them both, the creative mind is feminine, inspiration is feminine. When you learn how to balance those two, they become a force to be reckoned with. The ego and inspiration, when they're balanced and when they work together in partnership, can change the world. Humiliation is shame.
Exactly. But shame is a form of manipulation with a purpose.
Yeah. Really owning that we were never meant to be broken, that there's nothing wrong with having a healthy ego, that our ego is there to help us be, as you mentioned, to be aware of who we are and aware of our environment so that we can make conscious choices. None of us were meant to be broken. And it is possible to heal ourselves. And it does require a lot of self-forgiveness. I forgive myself for ever believing that I needed to be broken. I forgive myself that I ever had anything to be ashamed of.
I forgive myself for not knowing all the answers before I knew the questions.
Yes. It's self-forgiveness for me is one of the best tools I've ever found. It is the one thing I found that can lighten you up, I think, better than anything else, because you no longer have to carry the burden of shame and a broken spirit and a broken heart around with you. You actually can repair yourself of all of the beliefs that other people placed on you. It's all other people's stuff. We don't need to take ownership of other people's stuff. We've never needed to. And when we finally get to a point in our lives where we're ready to be self-aware, we can start unloading the baggage of other people's stuff.
So, you are not, whoever you are not responsible for someone else's decision.
Right.
You did not make them hit you. You did not make them rape you.
Mm-hmm.
You did not make them or force them to make a choice. The choice was always theirs.
Right.
And the choice was always their responsibility. And you are not responsible to get them into heaven. They are.
Right.
If they go.
If they go.
Right.
It's not your responsibility to make other people's choices for them. And, and ultimately when we come down to this whole idea of being humble, is understanding that it's really about lifting ourselves up. It's literally this complete opposite of humiliation, that when you have a healthy ego, it is about patting yourself on the back and thinking highly of yourself.
How can you give respect if you don't have any for you?
Right.
How can you give love to your children if you have none to give?
So it's about filling yourself up and thinking higher and higher and higher vibrations of love about yourself. Yes, I think highly of myself. And I should. I deserve to. Yes. Because I have a loving relationship with myself, I now have that to give back to humanity. I have it to give the whole of humanity, not just my children, not just my family. I have it to give to the whole of everything. I now have enough love and think highly enough of myself that I can give that to animals. I can give it to flowers. I can give it to every human being on earth, because I have enough of it in me that I can give it and give it and give it, and it never depletes me. So once you get it, once you see it, then you can fix it.
Exactly.
That's, when you ask me, how do I fix this? It's like, well, first that has to start with recognizing it. It has to start with understanding that self-awareness is the first step. As I've mentioned, what I ultimately teach is I teach people how to fall in love with themselves and how to fall in love with life. And for me, one of the most crucial steps to falling in love with life is, love yourself, no matter what. And that's what humility really is. It's not about being broken or having a contrite spirit. It's about really loving yourself.
So love yourself for what you are.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about what you're not.
And wisdom will come as a result of opening yourself up to more love,
right.
Not the other way around.
Is correct.
Yeah. So for me, the word inspired is that part of inspiration, that when you are in that space of love, you allow inspiration to take the lead. And that love is what ego really is that part of us that loves us.
You simply examine it and rise above it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
That's progress. And you need to believe in yourself enough to know you can really do it, because you can.
Right. And you need to pat yourself on the back and congratulate yourself for the successes that you have had. And,
right.
And own that it really is okay for you to celebrate yourself. That's how you build that healthy, balanced ego. And that healthy, balanced ego allows inspiration to move in the direction of that thing that you love. That's really why people are successful doing what they love, because they figured out how to balance that healthy ego with inspiration. And then you become, anything becomes possible from that point.
It's interesting, the concept of what you love coming into your life and being really embraced, because when people accept a job they hate, they get real dismal because they don't love life. Your job takes up, a third of your life in hours. And if they can get into a job they love, even if it costs more to live or they live on a lower income bracket, they shine. They're doing it whether they're getting the money or not because they want to. And they excel in that and they rise in that. And suddenly it starts bringing in more than it was before. And they love it. And I've seen that happen over and over. So do you think that's directly tied in?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it ultimately stems from self-love. What you put out there in the world is an extension of how you feel about yourself. So if you may be completely impassioned by being an artist and not thrive as an artist because you have feelings of worthlessness. Amazing. Because you have a broken ego. So as long as you feel broken on the inside, that will be what you project outward. You may want to be an artist your entire life and never have the courage or the fortitude and the value of yourself to make that dream a reality.
So we're projecting out onto life what we believe about us.
On the inside, yeah.
On the inside.
Actually up here, because the truth in your core, that gut feeling about who you are, inside, that's why I said create a life that deep inside you know your worth. All of those fear-based beliefs are up here as the endless chatter in your mind. But when you quiet that, again, that's quieting the mind. That's what being humble is. It's just quieting the mind. And really get into the core of who we are. What's there is love. It's that voice inside of us that says, you can do this. You're worth this. And we just have to quiet that banter, that chatter, and allow that truth to be heard. And you literally fall in love with life.
And if you don't love yourself, you cannot have a loving relationship with someone else because you don't have one with yourself.
Right. Because what happens even in a relationship, it is the love in that person and the love in you that are deflected off of each other. So if you don't have any love in yourself, you end up in a relationship that's based on need rather than love, and no one can ever fill you up. That emptiness is inside of you. Nobody can fill that up. It's an inside job. Everything ultimately is an inside job.
So you need to fill yourself up and heal it. And heal it.
Yeah.
This has been a very educational section. Thank you so much. You're teaching a lot of people great things. You're going to liberate a lot of people.
I hope so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.